Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared, and in this video I want to talk about this fox right here that showed up at the Temple Mount recently. And this is pretty significant to the Jews. In Jewish tradition, this has to do with prophecy. It has to do with what they call the final redemption, or the Messianic age when Messiah comes. And I think that that's significant because I think that the Lord speaks to them in a way that they understand in order to prepare them for the second coming, right? We know that the Lord works with not just us, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but with many people and in a way that they understand. And so you might look at this and be like, well, it's not part of our doctrine or anything like that. Foxes, they show up. There's probably times when a fox has shown up at the Temple Mount, but no one was there to record it, so on and so forth. And like I've said before, just because we can explain something doesn't mean that it's not a sign. Just because we can look at statistics doesn't mean that it's not a sign. A sign is something that the Lord uses to communicate an idea to those that are observing it, right? So in this case, the message is that to the Jews that time is really close, the time of the final redemption. And so you can think of it this way. Yeah, there's probably other times that foxes have been at the Temple Mount and they haven't been recorded, or maybe someone was there and they saw it, but they didn't record it on their phone or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that right now, at a very significant time, by the way, we're going to talk about the day that this happened. Somebody did record it. And the effect that it's having is it's putting in the minds of all these people that the final redemption is really close. Okay, so mission accomplished. The Lord, maybe it could be that it's like, okay, this day has arrived, so I'm going to have a fox come to where I know that there's somebody that has a phone that will record it, that will put it on TikTok or put it on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, I don't know. And, this is going to make news, and it's going to prepare all the people that see it on social media. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter if you can point to other times in the past that foxes were there, but there were no observers. Signs are for observers. So before we get into all the really interesting details that go along with this, let me give you the update on the Flood the Earth challenge, where we're sharing the Book of Mormon. 6,213 copies of the Book of Mormon have been shared so far. And we have one new report of somebody meeting with the missionaries. It was Betty Horn. She said that one of her people are now meeting with the missionaries, which is really good news. Everybody pray for all these people. We are now at 58 reports of people meeting with the missionaries. So keep it up, everybody. If you haven't joined this challenge yet, I would encourage you to do so. Use the Gospel Library app. Go to Scriptures. There's a button that will give you a link to share with people so that they can download the Book of Mormon app, and you can send that any number of ways: text, email, direct message, whatever. Remember that the channel goal is 10, so try to at least get to 10 shares of the Book of Mormon. All right, so back to this. Now, this was already on my radar because I'm always looking through the news. I'm checking all these different sites all the time. I have Flipboard, which is like a news app that brings all these like news stories to you. But I did get a number of emails from people, including Penny Tidwell. She says, thought you might like this article if you haven't seen it yet. Goes along with Tisha B'Av. And then she posted a link for a Jerusalem Post article. Just a reminder, Tisha B'Av on the Hebrew calendar is the saddest day in Judaism. The reason why is because, according to tradition, this is the day in which the first and the second temples were destroyed, along with other disasters and misfortunes in Jewish history, such as the Spanish Inquisition and the expulsion from England, for example. So there's special things that they do on Tisha B'Av. It's supposed to be a day of mourning. If I remember right, I think that they fast that day. You're also not supposed to bathe, and you're not supposed to wear leather shoes, and just like there's a whole list of things that you're not supposed to do, so that you're in the proper spirit of, grieving what happened to the temples and other tragedies that have happened in Jewish history. So we've recently been talking about that, and yeah, this sighting of the fox. It just so happened that it was on Tisha B'Av of all days. But let me go through the rest of the emails. So thank you, Penny. We also have Shanta Wilson. Hi, thought this might interest you. And then she posts the same, or she puts the same link for the same article. Thank you, Shanta. We got Devin Southam. Hey, Jared, this is kind of a follow-up to the foxes prowling around on the Temple Mount. Pretty cool. More prophecy revealed. Love your work, brother. Thank you, Devin. And then finally, we have Shannon Higgins. Hi, Jared. If you end up doing a video about this, will you please black out my email? Yes, I always do that. I know foxes were spotted on the Temple Mount back in 2019, and I believe you already did a video about it. Looks like it happened again. And then she puts the Jerusalem Post link. So we are going to go ahead and look at this article from Jerusalem Post. It's really interesting that they would do an article about this, because this type of story is usually what you would find on Israel 365, where they cover more biblically related things. So I thought it was interesting that this showed up in the Jerusalem Post. And yes, I did do a video about this before, 5 months ago, a video called A Sign of the Times on the Temple Mount, Zechariah's Prophecy, the Return of Jerusalem. Because in that video, what had happened, if we go to my Second Coming timeline, there were actually foxes seen this year on January 17th. So this is now the second time this year, the second separate time where a fox has been seen on the Temple Mount. The first time was January 17th. And then before that, you have to go back to 2019. And we're going to look at all these different appearances, because the timing is significant. It's really, really interesting. Now think about this. We saw this happen in 2019, a few years go by, and then we see this happen 2 times in the same year. And this is rare. It's rare for this to happen, for foxes to be observed on the Temple Mount. Let me remind you of what Elder Neil A. Maxwell said of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in a talk called My Servant Joseph, April 1992 General Conference. Now, my brethren, these are your days in the history of the church. Mark well what kind of days they will be. Days when, with special visibility, the Lord will make bare his holy arm in the eyes of all the nations. God will also hasten his work. He will also shorten the last days for the elect's sake. Hence, there will be a compression of events. So, in the world of Judaism, I think that you would probably view this as a compression of events, a compression of signs, because seeing it twice in the same year, when you hardly ever see it at all, probably a compression of events and signs. So let's look through this article. It's short. Okay, fox spotted along walls of Temple Mount. Sparks talk of prophecy. This isn't the first time in recent years that foxes have been spotted near the walls of the Temple Mount. A fox was spotted along the southern wall of the Temple Mount on Wednesday night, as Tisha B'Av, the day when the two temples of Jerusalem were destroyed, was marked. So again, looking at the Hebrew calendar here, this happened on the 26th at nighttime after sundown, so just as Tisha B'Av had begun, which is really interesting. Which is really, really interesting. That makes me think back to Rosh Hashanah of last year. Rosh Hashanah is the new year when they changed the date. And Jupiter, on that very day, was the closest to Earth that it had been in, I think it was like 59 years. Just do a search on my channel for Jupiter, and that video will come up if you want to hear all the details about that. But you had that event that happened right as Rosh Hashanah started. And now you have this year, a fox showing up right as Tisha B'Av starts. Again, remember, Tisha B'Av is mostly related to the temple, the destruction of both temples. And so for a fox to show up at the Temple Mount as Tisha B'Av starts, I don't think that that's coincidence. Now, another thing, you'll note here that it says that it was spotted along the southern wall of the Temple Mount. I find that significant because if we hop over to our virtual New Testament put out by BYU, and I'll put the link for that website in the description below. This is free. You can download this for free. And I think that they have a tablet version too. So either PC or tablet, maybe even on your phone. I'm not sure. But they have a pretty good representation of what Jerusalem and the temple would have looked like at the time of Christ. So if you face this way, that's north. Okay. The temple faces east toward the Mount of Olives, which is right there. West is behind the temple. And then on the south side, you see all those people down there? All those people are down there because this is the main entrance to the temple. There is like another entrance or two that I'm aware of, but this is like the main entrance. If you and I were living at that time and we were going to the temple, this is the way that we would have taken. So you can see that you go up these ramps, and the ramps lead to the court of the Gentiles, which is this portion right here on this side of the soreg. The soreg is this fence, which no Gentiles are supposed to cross over to that side. Okay, let's look at another view. Okay, so again, this is the south side of the Temple Mount. This is where the fox appeared. Okay, at the entrance in olden times where you would have entered the temple. I think that that's significant. And the Western Wall of today, where Jews go to mourn and pray and stuff like that, is just right over here. Okay, but anyway, the fox appeared somewhere along here. I think that's highly significant. Okay, the sighting of the fox went viral, with social media users saying the sighting was a sign of a prophecy coming true. You can go to my Twitter or X or whatever I'm supposed to call it, and I've re-X'd, not retweeted, but I don't know what that's called now. I re-X'd a video and a picture. So, okay, the social media users were referencing a story related in Tractate Makot 24b. So it's a part of the Talmud. Okay, a tractate is like a portion of the Talmud, in which Rabbi Akiva, Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Yehoshua visited the site of the destroyed Second Temple. Okay, so after the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, after Christ had ascended to heaven, this was happening after that, shortly after. When the rabbis arrived at the site, they saw a fox emerge from the site of the Holy of Holies and began weeping, although Rabbi Akiva began laughing. The rabbis asked Rabbi Akiva why he was laughing as a fox walked in a site about which the Torah wrote, and the non-priest who approaches shall die. So why are you laughing when there's a fox in a place that not even human beings are supposed to be unless you're the high priest? Rabbi Akiva responded that the appearance of the fox coincided with the prophecy given by the prophet Uriah, in which he stated, "Therefore, for your sake, Zion shall be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become rubble, and the Temple Mount as the high places of a forest." And then Jerusalem Post puts in parentheses, where foxes are found, right? Because foxes are found in forests. The way that reads in the King James Version, Micah 3, verse 12, therefore shall Zion be, therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem become heaps, and the mountain of the house of the high places as the high places of the forest, right? Where foxes are found. Okay. Skipping down. Well, okay, no, I should read that part. Although the prophecy appears in Micah 3:12, there is a rabbinic tradition that it was prophesied by Uriah and not Micah. Rabbi Akiva noted that the prophet Isaiah linked the prophecy to Uriah to the prophecy. What? Rabbi Akiva noted that the prophet Isaiah linked the prophecy to Uriah to the prophecy of Zechariah. And here's the prophecy of Zechariah. There shall yet be elderly men and elderly women sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. Don't worry. I'm gonna recap this so it all makes sense. Let's go to the King James Version and read what it says there. In the chapter heading, it says, "In the last days, Jerusalem will be destroyed or will be restored. Judah will be gathered, and the Lord will bless his people beyond anything in the past. Again, the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I was jealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet be old men and old women. There shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with his staff in his hand for very age." Okay, so basically it's saying that these two prophecies that, okay, so the Temple Mount is going to be plowed. There's going to be foxes on there because it's going to be like a forest. That happens first. But then in the last days, Jerusalem is going to be rebuilt. Okay. Just stick with me. Okay. Continuing. Until the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled. This is Rabbi Akiva speaking. Until the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled, I was afraid that the prophecy of Zechariah would not be fulfilled. Now that the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled, it is evident that the prophecy of Zechariah remains valid, said Rabbi Akiva. So in other words, okay, so now that this has happened, now that the Temple Mount has been plowed as a field and it's like a forest, now we know that that's valid, and therefore in the future, Uriah's prophecy, according to Judaism, Uriah's prophecy found in Micah will also be fulfilled. Zechariah's prophecy will be fulfilled. Okay, the sages said to him, employing his formulation, Akiva, you have comforted us. Akiva, you have comforted us, concludes the story in the Gemara. Again, that's just a part of the Talmud. Okay, former spotting of foxes near the Temple Mount. This isn't the first time in recent years that foxes have been spotted near the walls of the Temple Mount. In 2019, foxes were spotted near the western wall. So again, that's interesting because before it was spotted near the western wall, which is the wall where Jews currently pray. It's called the Kotel, also known as the Wailing Wall. So back then it appeared there, several years go by, and then it appears here. It's almost like it's almost as if to say things are getting more serious. Things are getting closer. Now the fox is at the entrance of the temple. Does that make sense? Okay, so at the time, the rabbi of the Western Wall and the holy places, Rabbi Shmuel Rabinowitz stated, quote, it was impossible not to cry at the sight of the fulfillment of the prophecy of foxes walked in it on the evening of Tisha B'Av. So this is interesting because back in 2019, one of the only other times that we know that this has happened, it was also on Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av 2019, Tisha B'Av 2023. Isn't that crazy? Continuing, he says, we who were Rabbi Akiva's students remember how he consoled his friends when they saw the same image immediately after the destruction of the temple. May it be that just as we were privileged to see with our own eyes what Rabbi Akiva and his friends saw, so we will be privileged to witness what Rabbi Akiva promised his friends soon in our time. Amen. Meaning the temple being restored and rebuilt. So it's really, really interesting. Let's look at Israel 365 and see what they said about it. Before I do, I want to remind you that I'm partnered with Israel 365. I've interviewed a couple of their people, including Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, the one that wrote this article. I'm supporting a few of their charities, and there's also a book that they sent me that you can get. So if you go to the description box of any video, first you'll see charities. Okay, so the first charity is for the widow right here of this man right here. He was killed in a terrorist attack, and he left behind his widow and 2 children, ages 1 and 2.5. So you can donate to them to help support her now that she's been put in this horrible situation. Okay, you can do this through Israel 365. Here's the website. Again, the link is right here in the description box. There's also a charity where they're planting trees in Israel. Okay, so you can help with that if you'd like. And then this effort to support these Jewish Ukrainian orphans that were orphaned because of the war that are now in Israel. And then if you're interested, there's this book here, 75 Hebrew words you need to understand the Bible, which has been really neat. I really like it. I think it's a really good resource. I've brought it up a time or two on the channel, and they gave me a code that you can use for $10 off. The code is Christian. And I don't know if it needs to be in all caps. It's probably not case sensitive, but just put it in all caps just in case. And then the link for it is right here. So Israel 365. All right. Prophecy fulfilled. Foxes spotted in Jerusalem's old city on 9th of Av. Okay, he has the picture there. And then he says, in a clear sign of the imminent rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. So look how he's framing it. And I do believe that a lot of religious Jews view it this way. A fox was spotted near the Zion Gate in the Old City on the evening of Tisha B'Av, the day commemorating the destruction of the 2 temples. The fox was photographed by Barak Blumenthal as he toured the city on the auspicious day. While not miraculous, foxes generally avoid cities and populated areas. Indeed, the sighting comes when Jerusalem was full of people coming to commemorate the day. In 2019, several foxes were spotted on the Temple Mount during the 9 days of austerity leading up to the 9th of Av. So I don't know exactly what to make of that between these two articles, because the Jerusalem Post one makes it seem like it was on Tisha B'Av itself. See, it says here on the evening of Tisha B'Av, so it seems like it was on Tisha B'Av itself. Although there's more detail here saying that it happened over a few days. But he says during the 9 days of austerity leading up to the 9th of Av. So I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. But either way, it's significant that these foxes are it's like they're being associated with Tisha B'Av. Okay. So let's move on. I want to go back to 2019 and read some of those details. This is also by Adam. foxes appear on Temple Mount in time to fulfill verse in Lamentations, read on 9th of Av. Okay, so now we're talking about yet another scripture. So first we read the scripture in Micah talking about the Temple Mount being plowed and becoming like a forest. And then we read the scripture in Zechariah talking about Jerusalem being rebuilt and the Lord being there and old men and old women in the streets. Now there's yet another scripture. This is in Lamentations 5, verse 18. Because of the mountain of Zion, right, the Temple Mount, which is desolate, the foxes walk upon it. So here it does actually mention foxes, and foxes walking on the Temple Mount. Okay, so let's read what he says. In an article on breaking on Breaking Israel News published 2 days ago, again, this is back in 2019, about foxes being sighted on the Temple Mount has already garnered over 250,000 reads, leading one influential rabbi to note that the phenomenon, coupled with the reaction, are sure signs that, quote, more prophecies are on the way, end quote. So he views it the same way, that it's that a big part of it is the reaction, the way that it's received, the way that it's viewed. That's what a sign is for, right? The sighting comes during the 9-day period of austerity, culminating in the 9th of Av, or Tisha B'Av, when Jews read the book of Lamentations, which includes a verse about foxes on the Temple Mount. So isn't that interesting? At a time, because you know that they have like throughout the year they read the Torah, or not the Torah because that's not in the Torah. Lamentations is not part of the Torah. They read the Old Testament. Okay, the Tanakh. That's what they call it, the Tanakh. So at a time when they're reading that, there are actual foxes that show up at the Temple Mount in 2019, in 2023. You can't tell me that the Lord didn't have a hand in that. Okay, moving on. The article, the most read Breaking Israel News article of the year, reports that visitors to the area of the Temple Mount observed a group of about a dozen foxes in the southwestern area of the Western Wall for the last 3 days in the early hours of the day. The image of foxes on the Temple Mount was described in the book of Lamentations, which some biblical scholars believe was written by the prophet Jeremiah. And then it quotes Lamentations 5:18, because of Mount Zion, which lies desolate, jackals prowl over it. The Hebrew word used in this verse is most accurately translated as foxes, and that's how it shows up in the King James Version. This verse appears in the 5th and final chapter of Lamentations, which culminates in the prophecy that Jerusalem will return to its former days of glory. Lamentations 5:22. For truly you have rejected us, bitterly raged at us. Take us back, Hashem, which is Lord. Please take us back. Let's see how it reads in King James Version. But thou hast utterly rejected us. Thou art very wroth against us. Okay. But what is there more? No. That's how the King James ends. Verse 21, turn thou us unto thee, O Lord, and we shall be turned, renew our days as of old. So maybe they just I guess they just combine it into one verse, or they reverse it. Take us back, Lord, to yourself, and let us come back. Renew our days as of old. Okay. It is important to note that this sighting comes during the 9-day period of austerity preceding Tisha B'Av. the ninth day of the Hebrew month of Av, on which Jews fast and mourn during for the destruction of the first and second temples, which were both destroyed on that day. Part of the Tisha B'Av service is a public reading of the Book of Lamentations. Rabbi Yosef Berger, the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, emphasized that the huge interest in what is ostensibly a minor event is in itself an essential element of Gula, or redemption. You see that? Those are big words. An essential element of redemption. And I assume that he's referring to the final redemption. Quote, "When God created the world, he hid himself in nature," Rabbi Berger explained. Continuing, "This was, of course, necessary to give us free choice, which is an opportunity for us to discover God. Many people can look at the foxes and say it is nothing, a natural event, that there is no difference between foxes or rabbits. But the fact is that the reason the Bible described foxes is that they only live in places of total desolation and loneliness. Yet Jerusalem today is a bustling city, and it is truly remarkable that foxes suddenly appear, and they seem to be happily playing. So many people look at the video and see nothing, but it is truly a blessed sign of the times that so many more Jews and non-Jews look at the video and see signs of Gula," Rabbi Berger said. Continuing, he says, "God is hidden, but his greatest joy is when we seek him out and find him. That is when Gula happens." Okay, so it's really fascinating. It's like those that have eyes to see, they know what they're seeing. Those that have ears to hear, they know what they're hearing. And there's people that don't. There's people that are too materially minded. They're too caught up in the world. They're not spiritually in tune. You know, they can't look at the fact that a fox, which is a very rare thing to happen, a fox showing up at the Temple Mount is a very rare thing to happen, happens on the Tisha B'Av in 2 different years. Of all days, it could have happened some other time. But it didn't. It happened at the time of Tisha B'Av, when the Jews are thinking about the temple. It's very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's go back to where were we? Okay. I'm going to come back to this article in just a minute. Now I want to go forward in time from 2019 to January 17th of this year. Foxes on Mount Zion bring biblical Book of Lamentations to life. This one was also written by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. Let's just read a little bit of this. A rare sighting of a fox running across Mount Zion conjured up images described in the Book of Lamentations Tuesday morning. Jewish tradition teaches that the appearance of foxes on the Temple Mount is proof that the third temple shall be built. Quote, "I only saw one fox, but I assume that there are more in the area," said Joshua Wander, a resident of the Mount of Olives, who spotted the animal running through the cemetery. He continues, "It is definitely unusual to see them. That's why I filmed it. It's something that I rarely see. Maybe it's a sign." So, for someone that lives on the Mount of Olives, I think that he would probably know what's typical and what's not in that area. There's a video of it here that you can watch. And that's pretty much all for that sighting. So again, just as a recap, seen in 2019, at the very least around the time of Tisha B'Av, but the Jerusalem Post article seems to suggest that even on Tisha B'Av itself, they were seen at the Temple Mount. So 2019, move forward 4 years, January of this year, more were seen, and then probably an even more important, more significant sighting was on Tisha B'Av just a week or two ago. And in that happening at a time, like I said, when there was all this unrest in Jerusalem, when the protests were going on. So the timing is very, very interesting. Okay, let's see. So let's go back to this article, 2019. As the focus of Jewish prayer and the site of the future temple, the Temple Mount has frequently been the scene of prophetic images. In July 2018, President Nelson's first year as president of the church, a large segment from one of the stones of the wall suddenly fell, barely missing a woman. Oh my gosh. Last year, during the morning prayers of the last day of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, a strange mist rose from the ground and covered the Dome of the Rock. I'm going to have to look at these stories, and I probably said this the last time I covered this article. Holy cow. And I'll have to put these on my timeline. Just a few weeks earlier, a snake crawled out from between the ancient stones. At around the same time, strange sinkholes appeared adjacent to the Sha'ar HaRakamim, which the Palestinians later turned into a mosque. Yeah, you guys, I'm going to have to look into these stories and cover those because I'm not too familiar. But I am aware of one other very interesting thing. And by the way, I just want to point out, the way that this reads, it seems like, yeah, because this was written in 2019. So when he says last year, he's talking about 2018. All these different things right here in this last paragraph all happened in 2018. Again, President Nelson's first year as president of the church. I don't think that that's coincidence. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up is this. I first saw this story in Israel 365, and I wanted to make sure that it was real. I wanted to, not that because at the time Israel 365 was still new to me, so I didn't really know what kind of website it was. They are reputable and they definitely do good work. But I wanted to verify this story where it said that the name of God appeared on the east side of the Temple Mount. So again, let's go back to BYU's virtual New Testament. Let's go up here. And let's actually look at it from the Mount of Olives. Okay, so you can see that we're looking west, right? We're looking westward. And so the temple is facing toward us because the temple faces east. Even though the main entrance for the masses is on the south side of the temple, if you were like an alien from outer space, in like there weren't the ramps there, or you didn't notice the ramps, you would probably assume that the main entrance would be right here because this is the entrance that goes directly in line into the main building, the Hamikdash, the building right here that you see where that housed the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. So for all intents and purposes, this is kind of like the real front entrance to the temple. And tradition holds that this gate right here, which is called the Golden Gate or the Shushan Gate because it faces toward Shushan, like the Persian Empire, its capital city was called, I think it was called Shushan or something like that. But anyway, that Christ, when he comes so Christians believe that when Christ comes at the second coming, that he'll enter through this way. And Jews believe that when Messiah comes, he will enter through the Golden Gate to go to the temple, right? So this is kind of like a special entrance, you could say, because of that. So I'm bringing that up because the name of God appeared in vines. So let's go back to that previous image. You can see this guy right here, Hananiah Naphtali. he's pointing to these vines that are growing. And they spell out the name of God in Hebrew, in modern block Hebrew script, the name of God, Yahweh, except for it's missing the last letter. This showed up, well, it says here a year ago. I feel like it's been longer than just a year, though. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and verify. But anyway, I looked at these videos. There's two of them. There's one by Hanania Naftali, and then one by Yair Lapid, or Yair Lapid, the former prime minister. Yair Levy, he's a Levite, by the way. Both of them have done videos where they've gone down and they've verified that it is actually there. You know, and people dismiss this. They're like, oh, well, that's just, you know, you're seeing things. You're seeing pictures in clouds, you know, it's the same thing. You're seeing letters in vines growing on the Temple Mount. But I find it very interesting that the name of God, Yahweh, which in English or in the Latin Bible we would call Jehovah, is being written on the front of the Temple Mount, on the eastern walls of the Temple Mount. And if I'd have to remind myself, but I think that they're appearing somewhere like right around here on this side. I don't think they're on this side, but they're like kind of like in this area. So that's another amazing thing that's happened in association with the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Maybe I'll have to do like a master video where I cover just like all these different things, including the ones that we just read in the last paragraph of this article. I have another couple articles pulled up. You have this one that has a link to YouTube if you want to see the foxes in 2019. So there's that. And yeah, this just repeats the same thing about the different things, like the stone that fell and the snake coming out of the rock and stuff like that. Strange sinkholes. If they only knew that President Nelson is the prophet today, and that there are still prophets, because in Judaism, the way that Rabbi Gerfein explained it to me is that just like, you know, Christianity, that prophets are a thing of the past. It's almost like the further back you went and closer to the beginning of creation, like going all the way back to Adam and Eve, the way that he kind of described it was that back in those days, it's like everything was like hot off the press, you know, and so people were much more in tune with God. His explanation about Enoch being taken away was that, you know, it's because he was so righteous, and that's true. That is true. But they think that basically, you know, those days are gone. That prophets were just for that time, because it was essentially closer to creation. So if the Jews only knew today that President Nelson is the Lord's prophet today, and that there are temples again, and in that in 2018 you have all these different things happening in Jerusalem that are happening the same year that President Nelson becomes president of the church, they'd probably be amazed. I'm amazed, you know, because we know that. Here's this view. This is such a cool program. And I was told by one of the people that worked on this that they're looking at putting out an updated version, I think this year. In fact, I should double check that and see if it's already happened. But let's go over here. So go over this way. This is the Soreg right here. And let's just do like a little run through of what it would look like going to the temple. So let's just say that we came up this set of stairs. You see that? If this was like complete, then there'd be daylight at the end of this. But anyway, you turn around, you'd be like, okay, I'm coming to the temple. Then you go past here. There's 2 signs saying, you know, Gentiles not allowed beyond this point. And then you would go to whatever gate you're supposed to go to. I think this one right here is the gate of the firstborn. But anyway, I think most of the time you'd come to the court of the women. I'm not entirely sure about that, but come over here. Stop. This isn't the easiest thing to navigate, by the way. This is like a thing for collecting tithing, essentially, for the temple treasury. That's where you would, you know, they think that this is basically where that story would have taken place. You know, the widow and her mite would have been like in one of these things. Court of the women, right here. And then you get to the court of, I think this right here, this narrow area right here is called the court of Israel, if I remember right. I'm not going to look it up right now. And this is like the court of the priests, where the slaughtering was going on and the burning of sacrifices. And then, of course, you'd have to be a priest to be in this area. So you'd have to be one of the sons of Aaron. I'm sure that Levites probably also operated over here, but they would have been doing like cleaning things up, you know, doing the more menial tasks. This part's called the Ulam, and this is the part that I talked about with the guy that helped with this project, because in this hallway there's actually like gosh, how can I not remember this? I think there's 2 doors. There may just be one, or there might be 2 doors over here. One of which leads to a set of stairs that goes up to a second level in the temple. Anyway, I did a video about this a long time ago. Then you go in here, and you're in the sanctuary, right? Menorah, shewbread, or showbread. And then the incense. Although this looks different from what I've seen on the Temple Institute website, because like the showbread had this really interesting like bread holder. I guess I don't know what it's called, but anyway, I don't know. And then of course the veil of the temple. And in here you can go in here. And you have the, God, I can't remember what they call this. Anyway, the foundation rock or stone, the bedrock, whatever. I wasn't really prepared to talk about all this. I just kind of wanted to do it really quick. So cool. All right. So anyway, yeah, we had this recent thing happen. I would take it seriously, especially since, I mean, I would take it seriously anyway, regardless of the day of year that it happened, but especially since it happened on Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av is associated in the Jewish mind with the temples. And soon they will be entering the temple, right? When Christ comes, by that time, we are going to have a temple there in Jerusalem. Bruce R. McConkie has said that it's going to be an LDS temple. I'm still not sure if it's going to be a temple like this, like what they're planning, a third temple that looks like this, or if it's going to be of some other nature, more like our modern temples. But either way, they will be going into the temple again, and it will be soon. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.